everybody, it's Tom Christie back in the painting studio, and I'm going to start a new project today, downsized miniature version of a preening hen mallard. And I want to use a pattern that I put together way back in 2010 for my world rig that year of a nice preening hen mallard. And I want to show a technique that I'm going to use to downsize that and create a miniature pattern from your full-size pattern. This is just one way to do it, and there may be smarter ways to do it, but I'm going to use my computer screen. You may not have a computer screen, but I'll show you one approach here to downsizing your patterns and make a miniature version of a carving that you've already completed full size. Welcome back. All right, I've got my old patterns laid out on a white sheet of paper, and that gives me a good clean background because I'm going to take a digital photo from the top down of this set of patterns, and I've got a top down view, a side profile of the head, and a front profile of the head. That'll give me everything I need to create the pattern. And I'm going to take a digital photo because I want to reduce this pattern from its current length of about 14.5 inches down to a miniature size of 6-inch maximum. And I'm going to do that on my computer screen, but first I'm going to take the digital picture. Let's take a look at that. Here's the digital picture I took, and one thing I wanted to mention is I took a few pictures, and this was just handheld from above the table, but I tried to make sure the perimeter here was consistent. I know this sheet of paper is a rectangle with right angles, so I just made sure that the perimeter was consistent. In other words, I didn't want to skew the dimensions of the miniature mallard by not getting directly above. So hopefully that's clear. And I took a few where these sides in particular were kind of skewed, and that's going to stretch and skew your pattern. So enough said on that. I've got my digital picture here now. And you might be able to do this on an iPad if you don't have a computer. But on my computer up here, there's a digital slider here, and I can use my mouse to increase the size. So as I'm sitting right now, the length of that is 4¼ inches, and I want that to be 6 inches or a little below 6 inches. So I'm going to use my digital slider here to get closer to a 6-inch dimension. That's a little too big. All right, I'm under 6 inches there. That should be good. So you can see the top-down profile crawled off of the screen here, but I can use my mouse to pull this around and get a clear view of each one of the pieces of the pattern. So now I'm just going to trace each of those with tracing paper, and let's take a look at that. Now with the lights out, I can just put my tracing paper over the screen, and I don't have a touch screen, which is tricky. If you do have a touch screen, it's going to get hard. As soon as you touch the screen, it's going to change something. But now I'm just going to trace around the photograph, and you get the idea here. So I don't need to show all of this. Got to make sure your paper stays in one place. But I'll trace this out, and then we'll take a look at it. And again, to get a clean profile on the top-down view, I'll just scoot that over. Same thing with the head profile and the front. Once the tracings are made, I just flip that over on a piece of cardstock and tape that down so it doesn't move around, and then retrace those to transfer it to the cardstock in reverse. So I'll get that done. All right, I've retraced those and transferred that to the cardstock, and now I'll just clean those up a bit, cut them out, and we'll have our patterns. Okay, I've got all my pieces cut out for the miniature mallard, and just a couple of notes. Number one, it's very easy to get a little extra material in the wrong place. Particularly on miniatures, you've got to be really accurate in tracing and cutting out, because a little extra material here or there on the length of the bill or otherwise will really throw the proportions off on a miniature. Just a word of caution. The other thing I've noted here is the width of the head and the width of the crown, and I put those notes on the side profile for future reference and for reference when I'm cutting out. All right, I've got the pieces cut out, the body and the head. The head I actually used a jigsaw because it's so small, too small for the bandsaw, and then was able to use the bandsaw on the body. Looks a little bulky right now, but first thing I did was locate where I want that neck to be according to the pattern and mark that on the wood here so that I can keep that in mind. We're going to take a lot of wood out of this area and create kind of a neck shape going back in that preening position, and do some layout work first and then do some grinding. There's some geometry here that I want to make sure I transfer to the wood. You can see the tail is kicked over in that preening position, and that throws the primaries off center, and I want to make sure I get that correct on the carving. So while I have it in this condition, I use an awl and just I want to mark the location of that tertial group and these primaries, and just punch through the pattern down into the wood so that I can give myself a guideline here, which I've already started to do, and where those primaries are going to be. And they tuck back into that side pocket. Here's the tip of the other primary group. It's going to come out of there and line up here, and there's where those big tertials are, up to the cape. And I want to mark the location of the back of the cape, which I think I've already done, but I'll make sure I've got a good mark. That was too good of a mark. I'll have to fill that in. Show you all the mistakes too. That's part of the deal. Okay, and I've got the neck location. So now I've got a few things marked out. The tail on this one is a little unusual too, because it's kicked down on that far side and up on this side. So I'm going to mark the upside, and I'll do that by getting a dimension with my dividers. To the top of that tail there, and transfer that to here. So I know that's where the tail is going to be, over here. And you can see I've left enough wood here that I can get the other side. The tail is going to be lower, I'm going to go from the center, kind of drop that down about to the water line. So this will be cupped, shaped, but kicked up on this side, lower on that side, and then the tail is cocked. So it gives the tail some animation in that preening position that I think is important. I've marked out where I need to round down here, but rather than use the bandsaw on that, I'm just gonna start the grinding process. For the head, I've got a center line put on there, and then I've got my bill pattern. Everything is in such small scale, it's a little hard to hang on to things. Okay, so I've got, and that looks a little offset, so I'm going to make a correction on the fly here. The other thing I wanted to mention is this neck where it joins up with the body is off to this side. So I'm actually going to put the neck circle off center so that I can remove material over here and contribute to that nice curved effect on that side of the head as she turns her head back to preen the scapulars. Okay, and then I need a dimension on the bill. This is all the same process I use for a full scale, just in smaller scale, but it's so important again to get these dimensions accurate. If I miss that by 1/16 of an inch, it's going to make this bill look way too short or way too long in miniature. I actually want to put an arc on there so I know where that bill, how far it comes back to meet the face. Pencil that so I can see it a little better. Same layout process. Now I can join these up, use my jigsaw marks to get a straight line across. Then I'll do the same thing under here. And then we're going to go from that junction point back a little past the eye. And back here, not pointed at the back, rounded somewhat. And we'll use the coping saw to make those cuts. All right, enough layout work. Let's get cutting. Just a few quick cuts with the coping saw. I'm going to cut on the outside of the line just slightly. To leave myself a little material. I have to change the angle on that. Delicate work. All of you who carved miniatures know what I'm talking about. Everything's a little bit slower so we don't do any damage. Now I'm going to make this angle cut. make these cuts back here. You could grind this. I don't claim to have the best technique. I just show you what I'm doing, and then you can decide if you want to do it in a different, more efficient way. All right, got those basic cuts made. All right, I'm going to start grinding the body, and the first thing I want to do is create this neck as it goes down into the breast. So I'm going to take material off of either side with this round nose saber-tooth burr, about 3/4 inch diameter. So I'm going on the side, and in just a second you're going to see the bird jump because I'm actually pushing into the grain right there. And that's scary. I'm going to stop right there and explain. It dug into that grain because the rotation of the bit was pushing into the end grain. I need to flip that around and carve from this direction, and it's going to be a lot safer. It's tricky with Tupelo because the grain often kind of moves around, and the other thing I was doing there was pushing too hard. And I just wanted to leave that in the video because I think it's helpful. You just need to be very cautious with these burrs. You could see how far that jumped, and it's more scary than dangerous, but it could also be dangerous if you had fingers close to that when it jumped. So I thought I would leave that in here. Now I'm being very cautious, and I think it's just a good reminder after having carved hundreds and hundreds of decoys, you still run into a situation like that with power equipment, and it's worth mentioning. So I'm going to go very cautiously. I'm not going to push as hard, and I'm going to try to pay close attention to the grain and just not push into end grain like I did on that other side. The rest of this video I'm going to speed up to 2 times so we can get through it quicker, but I did want to show you that part and explain what was happening. All right, this is at 2 times speed, and you can see I'm leaving that neck area intact where we're going to mount the head and shaping this breast up. And I'll probably just show pieces of this as I shape up the body because the video is quite long and pretty repetitive. But I'll show you enough to give you a feel for what's happening in each section. Now I'm just rounding the bottom area, and I want to leave a little leg stub there, so I have to be careful I didn't grind off too much material low. Again, going at this slowly. There's that little bump where the leg is going to be down at the water line, so I don't want to grind that off as I'm rounding the bottom here. I want to leave material there that I can work with later. The scale of these miniatures is really nice because you can make a lot of progress pretty quickly. Now I want to take material off the top of the tail here, and I'm going to carve carefully around the primaries and not try to get right up to my pencil lines, but just take off this material and get it out of the way. And I'll use other carving tools to get more accuracy around those primaries. As you can see, I'm just taking it down to my pencil line. And once I have that removed, then I can round this area. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this side very cautiously. You can see I'm stopping short of the pencil lines. Now I'm just going to take that side down. Now I'm going to flip it over, and I've penciled in the rump area underneath. Same process here. I'm going to use this bit to take off the majority of the wood and then go to a little finer burr to do the detailed carving and take it to my pencil lines. So we want that tail to end up in kind of a cupped shape as you look at the bird from the back, so it'll be angled and cupped. Now that I've roughed off wood, I'm going to switch to a small 1/4 inch cylindrical burr and use that with a little more control to refine the carving I've done. Begin to shape up the top of the tail as it meets the tail coverts there. And very carefully, I can use the edge of that burr to further define where the tail meets the rump underneath here. This is at normal speed, by the way. I've slowed it back down just to get a feel for how fast I'm carving with this particular burr. Same thing with this burr. It can snag like that big burr did, so especially pushing against end grain. So we just need to be cautious. All right, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. I've been working on the underside of the tail, and now I'm rounding the rump under there. And right now I'm leaving about a 1/4 inch of material on the tail thickness, and I'll take that down since this is more of a kind of a decorative smoothie piece. I won't need a big thick tail like we like to have in functional decoys. So I'll thin that up a little bit later. You can see it's starting to get that cup shape from the back. I can work this area on top of the tail and blend it in these covert areas. I'm using the end of the bit because it has teeth on it too, like an end mill, and that's very handy to get into tight spots. Now I'm going to take the tertials down on this side of the carving, create some separations between the halves of the back here. And I can use the end of this bit too to further define the neck here. I'll jump ahead again. I'm just refining the shape of the neck and the breast as they meet there. Now I want to work to define the lower edge of the tertials here and begin to drop this primary group down and define the edge of that primary group. And then I can use the end of the bit here to really clean up around the crossed primary tips and put more definition in that area. Just working on that V between the primary crossing and starting to define the primaries on this side of the body as well. Now I'm going to change to a little flame-shaped ruby bit, and I can use this to really further shape up the neck as it tucks into the cape there, and the cape itself. Get that formed up a little better. I can get back in here with this pointed ruby bit and clean up the neck as it meets the cape back here. There's quite a severe angle there. Once we get the head on, there'll be a nice curved S shape to the head and neck in that area. All right, I'll jump ahead. Next, I want to define these leg nubs. It's just kind of the elbow of the leg sticking out back here. Just puts a little accent on the bird. And so I've left material there that we talked about earlier. Now we need to shape that up and cut the lower edge of the side pocket in here. And to do that, I'm going to use a little 1/4 inch cylindrical ruby bit. Just kind of a general go-to bit for shaping things up like this. This bit has grit on the end of it as well, so I can use it like an end mill if I need to get into a tight spot. So I'm just shaping up the lower edge of the side pocket there. And now I want to dig down in, create the elbow area here. Taking material out on the top here to kind of define that elbow, and then rounding the leg nub. I'm going to call it a nub because you can only see a very little portion of it. But it is, like I said, kind of a nice accent to add some color in that area and interest. Then I need to shape up the side pockets as they continue on above the leg there and go towards the rear of the bird. So I'll jump ahead here, working the other leg stub there. It's a little hard to see, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing there. Just putting a little more definition on that, and then I'll jump ahead. Now I'm using the pencil just to outline those and give myself a better view of what they look like and how they tie into the rear of the side pocket there. All right, now we need to work on the side pockets. So a little more layout work. I've done a little layout work to identify where this side pocket is dropping down to, so that we can open up this wing area and really get some nice speculum and pieces of the wing and primaries in there and the tertials here. On this side, less going on, but I still want to show a little bit of speculum here. So I'll not drop the side pockets quite as low on this side. And then the cape actually tucks under the neck here. So I want to keep that shape in mind. So I've got that penciled in. So I'm going to go back to the carving bench, take material out of this area, and then get enough material here that I can round these side pockets into that wing. All right, back to the 1/4 inch cylindrical burr. And I'm going to dig in on the sides and follow my guidelines. I put guidelines from the top down and from the side profile of the bird, and I'm just taking material out with this burr and then shaping up those side pockets so we get a nice rounded shape. Same thing up here. I'm going to define the lower edge of the tertial group, bring that up here, and now I need to start removing material between those two areas. This is where I'll use the end of this burr to really mill out that area between the side pockets and the scapulars above, and then round the area up there. Define a little bit of the cape here. This is normal speed, by the way, and I will speed this section up so we can see more of the video a little more quickly. This is 2 times speed. I'm starting to define where the primaries come down and tuck into the side pocket. And I want some speculum showing there. So I'm taking out enough material that I can get a nice curvature on those side pocket feathers, and that really helps convey softness and roundness in the bird. And I'm taking that area down between, so it's at a lower level to give you that impression that the wing is tucked in to those feathers. All right, that's shaping up pretty good. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. Now I'm working that other side pocket, defining it in the cape. I'm rounding the scapulars. And again, we're going to show a little bit of wing on this side, but not quite as much as on the other side. So very similar carving process that we've already looked at on the opposite side. A little further along, and things are starting to shape up now. Generally, I've got it pretty well sculpted. And now I'm going to want to spend some time sanding things smooth. I'm going to go with my 1/2 inch sanding drum and use this to kind of finish sculpting the bird, at the same time smoothing everything out, giving it a good sanding overall. And by finishing sculpting, you can see I'm moving material. I'm not just sanding here, I'm also using this to shape things up. I really like this 1/2 inch drum for this purpose. A lot of times when the head is pulled back so far, you start to see some separation in the breast halves here. So I'm going to carve that in a little bit and kind of follow the S curve to add some gracefulness to the front view here. Go back to my 1/4 inch burr, cylindrical burr, and I'll use that to kind of dig a groove following my pencil line here to get it at the proper depth, and then round that section. Same thing in this direction. Round that down and then cut this lower area here, and then I'm going to remove material after I round this breast half. I'm going to remove material down here in this little triangle to give it some definition down there. Doesn't take a lot here. We just want some nice subtle shadows that's going to complement the paint in that area. Now I'll use my sanding drum and just smooth everything out. Take out the burr marks and finish shaping up the breast here. I'll speed this up. Again, we just want nice soft shadows and gentle curves here. That's looking pretty good, and then I'll do some hand sanding to finish things off. But you can see that shadow there cast. All right, I've got some sanding to do, but we've got the body pretty well rough shaped. Just give you a 360 view of that. Some refinements to do. All right, well, that's a good place to stop for the day. We've got the body shaped up, and in the next session, we'll do the head, probably get the bird assembled as well. Not going to put a keel on this bird. It's just meant to sit on the shelf. But next time, we'll see how far we get. If you're enjoying my channel and getting value out of it, please consider hitting the subscribe button. I really appreciate it. It's free. I'll keep it that way, but it does help me out as I continue to build this channel. I just thought it's an interesting diversion from full-size decoys every once in a while. I really enjoy the scale of a miniature, and I thought I would add that to my carving channel here. Until next time, Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to you.